None of us are free.
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 If one of us is chained, none of us are free.
We invite you to join us. None of us are free.
None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free.
You better listen, my brother. If you do, you can hear there are voices still calling across the years. They are crying across the ocean. They are crying across the land. And they will till we all come to understand. None of us are free.
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 If one of us is chained, none of us are free.
There are people in darkness. They just can't see the light.
If we don't say it's wrong, then that says it's right. We gotta feel for each other. Let our brothers know we're here. Got to get the message, send it out all loud and clear. None of us are free.
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 None of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free.
Well, I swear to you, salvation isn't very hard to find. None of us can find it on our own. We got to join together, spirit, heart, and mind, so all the souls who are suffering know they're not alone. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
None of us are free.
Help us out with the oohs. Ooh,
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. None of us are free.
that sounds so good. Let's do it again.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. None of us are free.
And back to the chorus. None of us are free.
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 None of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free.
It's the very heart. It's the very heart.
It's the very heart
Of humanity.
of humanity.
None of us are free.
If one of us is chained, none of us are free.
There are people in darkness. They just can't see the light. If we don't say it's wrong, then that says it's right. We gotta feel. We got to feel for each other. Let our brothers
Know we're here. Got to get the message, send it out all loud and clear.
None of us are free.
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 None of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free.
If you just look around you, you see just what we say. The world is getting smaller and smaller each and every day. And now it's time to make a change. It's time that we all realize that we got to come together and make a change that will last forever.
None of us are free.
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 And none of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free.
It's a single truth.
It's a single truth.
It's a single truth.
We all need to see.
We all need to see.
None of us are free.
If one of us is chained, none of us are free.
None of us.
None of us. None of us, none of us, now one of us. None of us, none of us, none of us are free. None of us, none of us,
Not one of us.
none of us, none of us. None of us, none of us, none of us are free.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Silver Spring. My name is Roseanne Douglas. My pronouns are she, her, hers. This congregation is one people with a diversity of beliefs, cultures, spiritual practices, sexualities, genders, and preferences. Here we are always growing, always learning, and always loved. Whether you are young, old, or in between, whether you've arrived here by walking, rolling, or singing in, whether you are wearing dress clothes or flip-flops and shorts, or you're an adult wearing a Spider-Man print dress, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are, and we're glad you've chosen to spend this morning with us today. The nursery is open downstairs in the administrative building for children ages 6 months to 5 years, for any families who choose to make use of that. But children of all ages are always welcome in the sanctuary for every service. We have fidget toys and busy bags in the back for anyone who might be interested in using those. Feel free to go back and grab one. If you're visiting us for the first or second time, or if you'd like to learn more about how to join the church, you can find Linda Barrett, our welcoming captain, after today's service. Thank you, Linda. We are especially glad to welcome several invited guests this morning. Our own Sydney Alexander, who grew up in this congregation, is a member of Lucy Murphy's choir, the Black Workers Center Chorus. Thank you. So wonderful start to today's service. We really appreciate you being here, and we're honored to welcome you here to sing today throughout the service. We're also honored to welcome Leslie Blaha and David Stein, who both serve on the board of the Montgomery County Educators Association. We will hear from all of them later on today's service. I'm also thankful for two young additions to the welcoming committee today who helped to welcome guests. My own children, Castor and Persephone, thank you very much. All right, you may now return to your seats. It's time to greet one another, and we're going to begin by greeting those on Zoom. For those of us in the sanctuary, please turn to the camera on your right and wave to those of us who are joining virtually. Good morning. Now, if you're joining us today by Zoom, it's your turn. Please turn your camera on and wave to those in the sanctuary so we can see you.
So we can see you. Testing.
I think it's working. Thank you. Now I invite those on Zoom to greet one another in the chat while those of us here in person get up and greet our neighbors around the sanctuary. In a minute or two, the music will start, and that's our cue to go back to our seats and sing the opening hymn, number 126. The words to all hymns will be on your screen. Thank you. All right, time to come back. Time to come back to your seat.
In a world convinced that worth is determined by wealth, by power, by the ability to make a profit, we gather this morning in the name of a deeper truth, that all are worthy, all are precious, all deserve lives of dignity and joy, rest and fulfillment, simply because we were born. Spirit of life, this Labor Day weekend, draw us away from the idol of productivity and all systems that sacrifice the lives of many for the comfort of a few. Let all who are tired, all who are heavy laden, all who feel burned out because the world treats people like things, find their spirits rekindled in your vision of a world where prosperity is not determined by those who have the most, but by the well-being of those who have the least. May all that makes us grateful, all that gives us courage, all that moves our hearts to take action for change be in us and with us this morning. Come, let us worship together. Good morning, everybody. My name is Reverend Kristin. I have the privilege of serving this congregation as settled minister, and my pronouns are she and her. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in saying the words on the screen as Roseanne lights our flaming chalice, symbol of our free faith. Let's rise. May this light warm our hearts with love and caring and guide us in the ways of truth. As we gather here for worship, we pledge ourselves to the endless search for truth, to the right of each to believe as mind, heart, and conscience dictate, to accept the responsibilities this freedom commands, and to implement our belief in the essential worth and dignity of every human being. Won't you please be seated as we sing our chalice lighting song?
Kindle a spark, fragile, full of power. Hold it in your hand, hold it in your heart. Let it warm you, let it fire your spirit. Let it burn bright, let it burn bright in your soul. Kindle a spark, fragile, full of power. Hold it in your hand, hold it in your heart.
So tomorrow is Labor Day, a holiday this country observes every year as a way to remember how the labor movement has made the lives of working people better, both a long time ago and still today. And I have a story for you today that is about labor. It's about work and about the very human tendencies that lead communities like ours to wind up needing things like the labor movement to work for things to be more fair for people everywhere. Now, I've come across this story in a number of different places, and I'm actually not sure of its original source, but it's called The Parable of the Fisherman and the Businessman. Once upon a time, a successful businessman was on vacation at the pier of a small coastal village when a small boat with just one fisherman docked. Inside the small boat were several large, beautiful yellowfin tuna, and the businessman complimented the fisherman on the quality of his fish and asked how long it took to catch them. And the fisherman proudly replied, well, every morning I go out in my boat for 30 minutes to fish. I am the best fisherman in the village. And the businessman was confused, and he asked the fisherman, if you're the best, why don't you stay out longer and catch more fish? What do you even do the rest of the day? And the fisherman thought about it, and he said, well, I sleep late, I fish a little bit, I play with my children, I spend quality time with my wife, and every evening we stroll into the village to drink wine and play guitar with our friends. I have a full and happy life. And the businessman rolled his eyes. Well, I am a successful CEO, and I have a talent for spotting excellent business opportunities. I can help you be more successful. You should spend more time fishing with the proceeds and then buy a bigger boat. With the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats, and eventually you'd have a whole fleet of fishing boats with lots of fishermen. Instead of selling your catch just to your friends, you could scale up to sell fish to thousands of people. You could leave this small village and move to the big city where you could oversee a growing empire. And the fisherman asked, but how long would all this take? Oh, 15, 20 years, said the businessman. But what then? Asked the fisherman. The businessman laughed and said, well, that's the best part. When the time is right, you would announce an IPO and sell your company stock to the public and become very rich. You would make millions. Millions. Okay, then what? The businessman said, well, then you'd retire and you'd move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late and fish a little bit every day and play with your kids and spend time with your wife and stroll to the village in the evenings where you'd sip wine and play your guitar with your friends. And the fisherman smiled and said to the businessman, no thanks. I'm happy right now. I have enough. Enjoy the rest of your vacation. And that's the end of our story today. I will let you make the connections to Labor Day. So I now invite you into our practice of sharing joys and sorrows, these from the lives of this gathered community. We may not wish to share all joys and sorrows with everyone here today, but the lay ministers and I are here to listen and support you if you would like to talk one-on-one. That said, sometimes we need a community to help us hold our joy and our sorrow, and I invite anyone who wishes to share today to form a line down this aisle so that she's not here in person today, but we often have an ASL interpreter in the sanctuary, so we are trying to practice by always making the line down this aisle. Please be sure to begin by saying your name so we all know who you are, and please speak clearly into the microphone. It should be like 2 inches from your mouth, otherwise we can't hear you. And after each person shares, I invite the congregation to say with me, in every joy and sorrow, we are held in love beyond belief. In the last year, I invite you to stand or raise your hand during the silence so the congregation can bear witness to your grief. Let us now enter into a time of quiet together, grateful for the sounds of life, especially young and wiggly life, all around us. breath of life within, among, and beyond us, we give thanks today for the promise that each new day brings, and for the love and support of friends and loved ones, both among and beyond those gathered here and now. In this life in which so little is ever really certain, we give thanks for the ties that bind us, each to all, for ancestors who worked and sacrificed so things would be better for us, and for the power to transform our world for those who will come after us. This Labor Day is a time of remembering and reflecting, a time of truth-telling, a time to commit to righting our relationships, not just with one another, but with our bodies, with our minds, and with the earth. Deliver us not only from systems of exploitation and unsustainability, but from the limits of imaginations made small by those who stand to lose so much when the day of equity comes. These and all things we pray for love's sake. Amen, and blessed be. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. I don't think we can overstate just how much the labor movement has done to improve the lives of working people in this country. It took incredible sacrifice and hard work to enact the protections for workers that I grew up taking for granted. But for every hard-won gain that labor has made, moneyed interests continue to push back. Now, to do any real deep thinking about the labor movement, whether of the past or the present, I think it's crucial to think about our world's status quo of exploitation and inequality. I'm not sure we'll ever really know where it comes from, why so many civilizations throughout human history have stratified themselves in ways that exploit the many for the comfort of a few. And I'm going to begin by thinking about this with some scripture that's central to our liberal religious heritage, scripture that's used by many in this country to legitimize economic inequality, scripture that's also used by heroes of justice to envision a more fair world for all. The central story to the Hebrew Bible is the story of the Jewish people's liberation from slavery in Egypt. It's impossible to understand the Bible apart from this powerful and defining story. By storing up literal cities of excess grain, that's what it says in the book of Exodus. There were cities of nothing but huge, what we would today call grain elevators of excess grain. By storing up cities of excess grain during times of plenty, Pharaoh was able to feed his own people when famine struck, but also gain control of other people as well. As Hebrew Bible scholar Walter Brueggemann writes, indeed, we may set it down as a truism that where there is great wealth, like that of Pharaoh, we will find this type of exploitation of labor that makes surplus wealth possible. This is the great starting point for the biblical narrative, wherein the emancipatory God intends that those who are enslaved by Pharaoh will be emancipated from their hard labor. The divine mandate that propels the narrative is, let my people go. I share this because we too live in a time and place where the wealth of nations has been made on the backs of enslaved and exploited people. We too live in a world where the many go without so that a few can enjoy absolutely disgusting excess. Whether it's profit made in private prisons, the military-industrial complex, healthcare, agriculture, education, or entertainment, it is not an accident that billionaires enjoy excess at the expense of everyone else. The fact that the wealthy profit from the suffering and privation of other people is just as much a feature, not a bug, a feature of our economy today as it was in ancient Egypt. Once freed from slavery, the rest of the Hebrew Bible is about the Jewish people's struggle to keep the covenant God made with them and avoid replicating Pharaoh's extractive economy. And after the story of their liberation, we have all these stories about prophets that God chooses to call the people back, to honor the covenant that was given to them, to help them and their community live in abundance and shalom. Prophets who often didn't really want to be prophets because people don't like prophets, because they don't like it when you say hard truths to them. Power does not like truth being spoken to it. Now, our Unitarian Universalist tradition, born of two heretical Christian faiths, has for generations rooted its work for justice in the biblical tradition as well as other traditions. And some might wonder what value such an old story or collection of stories about such different people with such different beliefs and different lives has for people like us in the postmodern world. Well, every time I read the Jewish and Christian scriptures, I'm blown away by how consistent human struggles have been across millennia. The problems of our world feel impossibly huge today, but the prophets would have said the same thing about the challenges that they faced, and yet they still called their peoples back into a more life-giving covenant, a more abundant way of living with the needs of the poor and the weak and the powerless at the very center of their concern. Exploiting others for one's own gain may be a very human tendency, but our faith tradition again and again testifies to the deep truth that such living leads us and our communities towards destruction, while shared strength and abundance and prosperity can be found only by living with fairness and equity and hospitality. This morning, we continue our faith's long tradition of considering how we can partner with others and leverage our collective power to resist the forces of exploitation and instead align ourselves with the forces of life, equity, and abundance. This morning, we explore how we will be set free. Last year, this congregation did work to discern our mission and vision for the future. Working more closely with organizations in our community and advocating for our values in the world rose to the top of our priorities. So this year, we will be learning about some of the organizations whose work and missions intersect with our own, organizations who could really use us to leverage our power in their service. So without further ado, I am especially glad today to welcome Leslie Blaha and David Stein to have a holy conversation with me about how we as a congregation can support the work of labor organizations like MCEA. Let's give them a warm UUCSS welcome. You all are going to share that mic, and I'm going to have this mic, and hopefully we won't have any feedback. So to begin with, Leslie, I was hoping you could please share a brief introduction of yourself so the congregation can get to know you a bit.
We're good, okay. My name is Leslie Blaha. I'm a teacher at Blair High School in Silver Spring. I've been there for 22 years. Hey, Blair alumni, go Blazers. And all the feeder schools to Blair. I'm a science teacher, although this year I became staff development teacher. I've been serving on the MCEA Board of Directors for a year, and this will be my second year as a member at large.
Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, everybody. Happy Labor Day, and thank you for having us. My name is David Stein. I am also at Blair High School. I am a math teacher there. This is my 30th year in the classroom. Yay. I also have the privilege of serving as MCA treasurer, and I also serve on the board of directors, and I have been part of our last two bargaining campaigns, and I was coordinator of our last bargaining campaign.
Thank you so much, both of you, for being here. It means a lot to us. So here's my first question. What is the purpose of the MCEA, and what are the values that ground the board's work?
Well, our number one objective is to represent and serve our members. And people talk about MCA, as you'll hear it referred to as the teachers union, but that is very narrow. We have 14,000 members. We represent all certificated employees of Montgomery County Public Schools. So yes, that includes a lot of teachers, but it has 30 other job categories that we serve, including school psychologists and social workers and pupil personnel workers and all sorts of other positions. So that is our biggest job, is trying to serve all of those different positions and try to represent them all with the rights that they deserve. We engage in collective bargaining with the school district over wages and working conditions. That's the rights that our members have given in the state of Maryland. Of course, they don't have that everywhere in the country, but we do in Maryland. But we see our mission much broader than that, because our working conditions are our students' learning conditions. And so when we are working for more salary, a better salary structure, that is beneficial to our students' learning conditions. Having teachers who don't have to go out and work second or third jobs, that helps our students and their families. And so we see our mission is much broader than that. We also are an organization committed to social justice. We work very hard. In our bargaining, we try to do what we call bargaining for the common good, which is bringing up topics like housing and food insecurity and issues like that, which the school district sometimes isn't so excited to talk to us about. But we see our mission as much, much broader than just representing our work.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about the issues that you bring up in addition to education in your role as board members on MCEA. I have often said that I feel like our society uses the education system as a Band-Aid for so many of the other social services which we don't adequately support. So I'm really glad to hear that you're speaking the truth about that, you know, in other spaces. Leslie, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think David pretty much hit it all, and I think the message to take away is that it's not just about what happens in schools, because what happens in schools has an impact in the community, and what happens in the community has an impact on what happens in schools.
Right, it's all interconnected.
Exactly, and so we all work together in order to make sure that our students have the right conditions to learn what it is they need to learn.
All right, so next question. What shifts have you experienced in education over the last 5 to 10 years?
Well, there was COVID.
That whole thing.
We try not to speak of it, but obviously COVID has had lasting impacts in several different ways. Now, some of the technological advancements that we made during COVID have had a positive impact on schools, but closing schools was a huge detriment to student learning and also teacher morale. So all of that together is still an impact that is being felt in schools. However, because of the challenges that COVID presented, the staff members and educators in schools became much more aware of what they were being asked to do beyond what we are contracted to do. And so a lot of educators became more empowered in fighting for their rights, but also compensation for extra things, right? All teachers wanted to do the best for their students, but we couldn't do it with no resources. And so I found that a lot of the advancements that we made in bargaining for COVID, we had, hours and hours and hours of bargaining for COVID-specific contracting issues. And it worked because the community wanted change and educators wanted change. And that empowerment has continued beyond COVID, which I think is really good. The other thing that happened during COVID was an increased racial awareness of how we treat people of color in the United States, and how institutional racism has had an impact on education. No matter how liberal you think Montgomery County is, the state of Maryland, the United States, compared to anywhere else, there are long-standing issues that have a direct impact on the way students are treated in schools, how staff are treated in schools, and how the educational institution needs to change in order to broaden the diversity of our curriculum, but also of our workforce.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, I do think that COVID, for all of its awfulness, really did make it more apparent to our members, and I think to a lot of other people, where they fit into the larger scheme of things. And most of our members had never, for instance, seen a school board meeting, ever, right? And now all of a sudden they realize, well, those decisions that are being made in the school board or made in the county council, those are affecting their working conditions and their students' learning conditions. And I think that really came out of the urgency of COVID, when for the first time, I think a lot of them were fearful for their health in the schools. And so I do think that's a positive, and I know that our members are far more engaged than we were in 2020. The attack on the diversity is really problematic, and it is coming to us hard in Montgomery County in a way that I think 2 years ago I would not have predicted. That there would be organized efforts to have parents opt out of storybooks that have families that they don't like, or is really, really problematic. And I think that has been, over the last few years, the challenges that we're increasingly have to face.
Thank you. So I'm curious to hear what the union's priorities are for this year and into the future, and why.
Well, I don't think we're have a big change this year. I mean, we are hopefully coming out of the pandemic, and things are beginning to get back to quote unquote normal, whatever that means. But we're continuing. We don't have to bargain this year. We settled a contract last year, and so that yay.
And as I understand it, you had quite a leading role in making that happen, David.
Yeah, I was a member of our team. Yeah, I mean, we have a very large bargaining team because we try to make sure that we're representing, as I said, we represent so many members in so many different jobs that we try to have a big team that can speak to the implications. But anyway, we don't have a contract, so I think that will maybe allow us more space to get into some of the other things. We're really working hard with the school district on developing community schools, which I don't know if you all know what those are, but a school that focuses on the total needs of the community, of the students and their families, and not just the specific academic learning. And we're rolling out more and more of these community schools throughout the county, and we're intricate in that. And then our political work continues. We have this issue in Montgomery County where we can have great contracts, but the council needs to fund them. And they did some kicking down the road last year, and so we're going to have a lot of political work to do this year.
All right.
I would add that I think informing the community of the needs of educators, so thank you very much for this opportunity, is really important, because we may have 14,000 members, but there's several times that in Montgomery County and in the state of Maryland, and the voting and the advocacy that you do has an impact on the people who are elected into power, who have an impact on what we are allowed to do.
All right, so I have kind of a fun question. Leslie, I'd love to start with you, but I'd love to hear from both of you on this one. If you had a magic wand, what's one change that you would make to our educational system, and why?
My magic wand, I've had this magic wand ever since I started. Blair High School is the largest school in the state of Maryland, and it rivals like LA County in California. I mean, it's huge. And so we are now at 20 portables outside of our building. So we have a whole other school that's outside our actual school building. My wish list is smaller class sizes, which seems like a very small wish. However, in order to make smaller class sizes happen, you need more teachers, you need more space, you need more money, and all of these things they coalesce into this very smaller class sizes. How hard can that be? Just put 20 kids in. No, that's smaller class sizes involves a whole lot of other things on the wish list. So,
I think I would, if I could wave my wand, I would stop making teachers and teacher unions this target in these cultural wars we're having. I watched the Republican presidential debate, and the number of times that they chose to say teachers unions were the problems for various ills in the society was really shocking to me. And teachers do not become teachers to get rich.
Really?
Really.
Some people think that ministers want to do this to get rich too.
They become teachers because they think that that's a way that they can serve, and they become teachers because they think that helping the young people, become the people that they can become is their mission. And there's nothing nefarious about that. And there's nothing nefarious about teachers coming together to organize for their working conditions and their students' learning conditions. And the targets that we feel, and again, it's coming here, I would wish away with my wand. And the other thing I would say is that we have to start respecting teachers' professionalism and their autonomy, and that they are the experts in their classroom. They know what their students' needs are, and the increased reliance we have on scripted lessons and on supervised planning time and all this kind of stuff is really detrimental. So I would wish that away too.
I had, so my mother's a chemist, my father's an engineer, and I struggled my entire life in math and science. They did not know what to do with me. But one of my favorite teachers ever was my geometry teacher in 9th grade. His name was Mr. Flowers. He was awesome. He was, a younger teacher. He had a ponytail, so, he was pretty cool by my standards at that time. And I'll never forget, somehow he managed to haul a pool table into the classroom for one of our lessons on geometry, which was really, really fun. And he used to play the Grateful Dead right before we would take exams, because he said that it would help us do better. And he would lead us in a guided meditation after we listened to a Grateful Dead song, and then we would take our exam, and it was the best thing ever. And I don't know if he would be able to get away with that today, you know? But it was so wonderful for me, and I got the best grade of any math class in my life in geometry, and I'm convinced that it was because of his uniqueness and his bringing who he was, you know, into that classroom and with us students.
Yeah, I knew Jeffrey pretty well. He retired a couple years ago.
He retired?
Yeah.
Oh my word. Okay, all right.
But he was doing crazy stuff.
I loved him. Oh, he was, well, if you see him, let him know that there was one student at Wheaton High School who deeply appreciated his teaching. So he was great. Final question. How can groups like this congregation support the important work of MCEA? In other words, what from us would be most helpful?
We alluded to it earlier. It's really your participation in voting, really. Your voice is heard, and the message from this congregation is fantastic. It's exactly the direction that I think we need to be going in terms of education, in terms of community building, in terms of society. The openness, the love for everyone, the acceptance of everyone. But in order to get politics to follow that message, we need your voices. So voting in every election, if education is something that is important to you, voting the Apple ballot is super important. We vet all of the candidates based on what kinds of decisions and policy work they will do to support teachers. So that would be mine.
Yeah, I agree with that. We need all the allies we can find. The fight for public education takes all of us together. It can be, it can be MCA or our sister unions, but in the end, it has to be the community who's there for us. When we are with the school district saying, this is what we need, it's not what we want, it's what we need to have allies in the community, and I think that's where groups like yours can come in. And then I would also say, yeah, of course, voting. I would also say on an individual level to get involved in your schools, to get involved in PTAs, to get involved in volunteering in the schools. The more of our community that's in our schools, I think the more that helps everybody. So I would add those two things.
Thank you both so much for being here today. This has just been really wonderful, and I hope it's been helpful for the congregation in imagining how we can better align ourselves and our resources and our energies and our focus with our values in the world and with the MCEA. So thank you both so much for your good work.
Thank you for having us. Happy Labor Day.
Each year, we invite everyone who calls this church their own to make a financial commitment for the year ahead. Some of us have set up auto pay online, others send in checks through the mail, some even express their generosity by moving money out of stocks. Hint, hint. But we still give and receive an offering each week. We do this because the act of giving is important, so important it's been included in our worship every week for generations. Most other places in our lives are transactional. Stores and restaurants and service providers where we pay money and receive a good or service. But UUCSS is different. This congregation isn't a consumer economy, but rather a gift economy, where everyone contributes freely according to their ability, and everyone shares in the abundance our generosity makes possible. We give thanks for every gift given today, for the opportunity to practice generosity together, and for the ways our gifts are more powerful together than they are apart. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Kanu tara yodana ale mason segima. Jarabi tara yodana ale mason segima. Ndeni kaberiza ni jarabi mba fekenya ndani. Ndeni kaberiza nekanu. I want to know. Ndeni kaberiza ni jarabi mba fekenya ndani. Ndeni kaberiza nekanu. I want to know. Jarabi wale yore jantala anyana finte binane peganu fede. Shari wale yore jansika yana finte binane peganu fede. Oh, jarabi tara yore jana ale mason segima. Jarabi tara yore jana ale mason segima. Nale nale ma opa nale. Jarabi wale yore jan sigila ma fanwe. So gambada tenna na bolisa. Klekon klekaya supa. So gambada tenna na bolisa. Suko tenna na bolisa. Nene mi eja cha densenala. So gambada tenna na bolisa. Klekon klekaya supa supa. Jana ale mason segima. Jarabi tara jana ale mason segima. Jarabi tara jana ale mason segima. Jarabi tara yora jana ale mason segima.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Bowman, and I'm a member of the board. My pronouns are she, her. We gather in person and on Zoom for worship every Sunday morning here at UUCSS. Along with Sunday services, this congregation is a vibrant collective of volunteers and staff. We're part of the wider Silver Spring community. We're a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and we're part of the Global UU denomination. Today, we have 5 announcements. First, it's recruitment and registration season for religious education. A few folks who signed up months ago to teach this year have had to pull out, so we're looking for a few more responsible adults to help out. If you'd like to be involved in any small or large way, please reach out to Sarah, our RE coordinator, or Reverend Caitlin, our assistant minister for spiritual growth. Their contact info is in the back of the sanctuary near the Gnome house. Second, if you've got a kid who will be going to RE this year, please use the QR codes also in the back of the sanctuary to register them. Families with 7th to 9th graders, please make sure to also register your kids for Our Whole Lives, our very popular comprehensive sexuality education class. Third, children and children at heart, our Nome has a beautiful new house you can admire in the back of the sanctuary, but they still have no name. Please vote for your favorite Nome name. Voting will remain open until September 17th. 1 vote per person. Fourth, next Sunday, September 10th, is Water Ceremony Sunday. Whether from your favorite beach, the stream along your favorite hiking path, or just the hose you use to water your garden, everyone is invited to bring some water to mingle in this annual ceremony, celebrating the way our gifts mix and mingle here in community. Kids are invited to wear their swimsuits under their clothes for the day as they can take part in splash time on the lawn after the service. While the kids play, adults are invited to join Reverend Kristin in the sanctuary for volunteer training, an opportunity to learn more about how this congregation is organized, how we keep one another sage, and how you can get involved. We'll also provide pizza for lunch for kids and adults alike. Finally, if you plan to come to church next Sunday and you have a sprinkler or a slip and slide, you can lend for a couple of hours. Or if you'd like to hang out with the kids on the lawn instead of going to volunteer training, please let Sarah or Reverend Caitlin know. Fifth and final, all are invited to attend the Catoctin Mountain Fall Retreat on October 13th, 14th, and 15th. Come overnight or just the day on Saturday to play, connect, and cook side by side in a beautiful national park just outside Frederick. If cost is an issue, we offer scholarships. See the flyer on your chair or the chair next to you for more info and the QR code to register. Not sure if this woodsy weekend is right for you? Write to Catoctin at uucss.groups.io.
Please join me in the words of chalice extinguishing on the screen. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. And I now invite everyone to rise, embody your spirit so we can sing our closing hymn. It's number 1030 in the Teal songbook, but it's pretty easy and quick to learn. I'm going to go over the thank you, Zulu words for you. It's Sia Humba, Kuka, Nien, Cuencos. Let's put it together. Sia Humba, Kuka, Nien, Cuencos. See, we can pronounce words that are not in English correctly. We can do it. We can do it. Okay.
And then before we do our intro, we'll do also the English verses. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God, and that repeats. And then we'll also do singing, and then back to Siahamba Kukanyen Kwenkos. If we can get the slides to go back to the Zulu at the end, that would be good. So we hear it first from Grace. Kukanyen Kwenkos, Siahamba Kukanyen Kwenkos, Siahamba Kukanyen Kwenkos, Siahamba Kukanyen Kwenkos, Siahamba, oh, Siahamba Kukanyen Kwenkos, Siahamba, Siahamba Kukanyen Kwenkos. We are marching. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching through the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching, marching, we are marching. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching, marching, we are marching. We are marching in the light of God. We are singing. We are singing in the light of God. 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 We are singing, singing, we are singing. We are singing in the light of God. We singing in the back to Sia Hamba. Sia Hamba kukanyen cuentos. Sia Hamba kukanyen cuentos. Sia Hamba kukanyen cuentos. Sia Hamba kukanyen cuentos. Sia Hamba, Sia Hamba. Sia Hamba kukanyen cuentos. Sia Hamba, Sia Hamba. Sia Hamba kukanyen cuentos.
Won't you please be seated? I just love that song. That is a song from South Africa. It is from the South African freedom song tradition, if you're not familiar with that. And I was indeed clapping on 1 and 3 because that is how you clap to South African songs. You do not clap on 2 and 4. Just as an FYI, that was not a mistake. Music education here at UUCSS. I offer these words of benediction by Emily Richards. May you leave this time together changed. May the promises you've made to yourself about who you want to be feel closer to the reality of who you are right now. May you share that feeling of transformation wherever you go. May it spread into every word, deed, thought, and interaction until we are all changed, transformed and transforming together, becoming our better selves, co-creating a better world. Our worship has ended, and now our service begins.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
When we hold together.
When we hold together.
We make ourselves strong.
We make ourselves strong.
Together we stay here.
Together we stay here.
Right where we belong.
Right where we belong.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't
gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
When we hold together, we make ourselves strong. Oh, together we stay here.
Together we stay here.
Right where we belong.
Right where we belong.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
This city is where.
This city is where
my children were born.
my children were born.
But the landlord says children.
But the landlord says children
Can't stay in my home.
can't stay in my home.
Somebody please tell me.
Somebody please tell me
Where children belong.
where children belong.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't
Us
gonna
together.
move. We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
When we hold together, we make ourselves strong. Together we stay here, right where we belong. We ain't gonna move. We ain't gonna move.
The landlord has trouble.
The landlord has trouble.
The landlord has woe.
The landlord has woe.
Maintenance costs money.
Maintenance costs money.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows he contributes so much money to the mayor's race. He can't fix up my place, so I ain't gonna pay that rent increase. We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
We ain't gonna move.
When we hold together, we make ourselves strong. Together we stay here, right where we belong.